Toyota is back in the hot hatch wars. We've got the 300 horsepower GR Corolla on track. So we finally have had a chance to sample the GR Corolla on track, and it does not disappoint as long as you are on a racetrack. We'll get into a little bit of why that is in just a few minutes, but let's first talk about just what the GR Corolla is. Start off with a typical 5-door Toyota Corolla. You throw some big flares on it, you throw some 18-inch wheels and tires with some sticky Michelins on there, and you throw a 300 horsepower 1.6 liter 3-cylinder in the front, driving all 4 wheels through a 6-speed manual transmission. That's the only transmission available with this car. 3 pedals, no waiting. And it is just as exciting to drive on track as the specs make it sound. So let's talk about that 3-cylinder a little bit. Why a 3-cylinder? Well, the big answer is probably weight. The Toyota 1.6 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder weighs only 240 pounds. And with a front-wheel drive basic chassis, you're talking about an engine that sits out in front of the front axle. So any weight that you can get outside of that center of rotation is going to be weight that is best saved. Now, this is an engine that also likes its boost, and it likes to stay on that boost for max performance. Driving around town, if you aren't really getting into the boost, you're not going to really feel all 300 horses, and it's going to feel decidedly old school. There's some turbo lag, there's a little bit of waiting for that thrust to build, but once it does, it's pretty exciting. We did see some spots on track through our VBox data where you really have to work to keep that boost up to get max performance, though. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we do our data analysis. Let's talk about chassis a little bit. Struts up front, A-arms out back, 18 by 8.5 inch wheels with 235 millimeter wide Michelins on those 8.5 inch wheels. Now, like most cars that come out of the factory, especially tall, heavy cars, the GR Corolla does suffer from a little bit of a lack of camber, but basic handling is solid and, best of all, very, very accessible. Now, like most front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive cars, it does tend to understeer a little bit. After all, it's a tall hatchback car. So it does understeer a little bit, but it's pretty benign, and with the all-wheel drive system, the throttle is always your friend. You can always use that horsepower to pull yourself through a corner and to change the cornering attitude of the car while it's in the corner. Underneath the car, one of the most impressive things about it, and one of the things we love the most as a result, is the brakes. 14-inch rotors with aluminum hats up front, 1.1 inches wide in the front, 11.7-inch diameter rotors in the back, 0.7 of an inch wide, fixed calipers in the front, floating rotors. It's a beautiful track-ready brake package that just never gives up. And it also lets you do some amazing things to balance this chassis. Now, we've mentioned this a couple times before already. It's a tall car. It's a front-heavy car. It's an economy car with a bunch of go-fast stuff on it. And it's only so easy to overcome the basic architecture of a car with bolt-on hard parts. So the more ammunition and tools that you are given to balance the chassis of that car, the better it's going to feel and the more responsive it's going to be for the driver. And the brakes are a great example in the GR Corolla. Fantastic feel, even with the stock pads. We noticed almost zero fade. There's a little bit of a temperature curve where your first lap has a certain feel to it, and then every subsequent lap has a little bit of a different feel to it as those brakes come up to temperature. But even in 4, 5, 6, 7 lap sessions, we never experienced anything that I would really call brake fade during our testing. Now, the trim level that we tested was the Circuit Edition. It's a limited edition, comes with some cosmetic upgrades, as well as stuff like a carbon fiber roof and vents in the hood. Now, those vents in the hood are a cosmetic upgrade. They're also a performance upgrade. Obviously, a 25 PSI turbocharged engine going to produce a lot of extra heat. Anything you can do to get that heat out from under the engine bay is going to be a little bit of a performance advantage, especially when it comes to things like heat soaking. Coming back in after a hard track session the more you can get that heat out of the engine bay into the atmosphere, better that's going to be for engine longevity and performance. So we'll look at the VBox data here in just a second, but overall thoughts on this GR Corolla is it is a brilliant car on track. It is so fun and so easy to drive, but the total package, it's the automotive equivalent of eating a tube of cookie dough. Yes, it's delicious. Yes, it's going to make you happy, but there's a raw quality to it. This car is very much a throwback to the days of things like the Mazda Speed 3 or even the Omni GLH. It sacrifices a lot of sophistication for performance. Now, I'm okay with that. I love driving this thing on track. I can put up with maybe a less premium experience of the interior of the car using some more budget-friendly materials if the car is a hoot to drive on track, which this thing absolutely 100% is. But if you're talking about something like this Circuit Edition, you're talking about $45,000 plus, then whatever the dealer is going to tack onto it, you're talking about a pretty substantial investment for a Corolla. Now, kudos to Toyota for building something like this. Took a lot of guts to put all this great stuff onto your most budget-friendly chassis. A big thumbs up from me for just going all out for performance. But I can definitely see the criticism of somebody who, if they're spending premium car money, they want a premium car experience. For me, the premium experience lives on track, and that's why we're going to take a look at our VBox data next. All right, so let's take a look at the VBox data here from our VBox HD Lite that we gathered while on track. We'll back ourselves up to the start of our best lap at the Florida International Rally and Motorsports Park. And now, just looking at this curve, I've looked at a lot of speed traces on the firm over my time, and I can tell you that this is a pretty solid curve. We can look at things like these braking peaks right here. We'll zoom in real close, and we see pretty nice definition in these braking curves from acceleration to braking. Shows you a car with a good pedal that you can stab really, really quick, get to max braking very quickly, and look at the descenders on a lot of these braking curves. Nice and straight, minimal bowing, minimal cupping, just transitions from acceleration to braking very, very quickly and very, very thoroughly. Those 14-inch front brakes really doing their job, and great feel too. A couple things I do want to point out, especially right in this area right here. Here's a 3/4 shift. Back that out just a little bit. Here's a 3/4 shift right here. We're accelerating in third, shift into fourth right here, and you can definitely see that this particular 3/4 shift has a little bit of a plateau and kind of a concave look to it. The 3/4 shifts further, in other parts of the lap, here's a 2/3 shift, here's a 3/4 shift here, more of plateaus than they are sort of concaves. What's going on there is actually, if you do not snap those 3/4 shifts really, really quickly, you're going to come out of boost a little bit. You're going to actually lose a little bit of acceleration once you go back to the throttle. So it's really, really important for a fast lap time. There are tenths of a second on the table. If you don't really, really snap that 3/4 shift, stay in the boost and keep that engine as close to that 300 horsepower peak as you can. The difference between on boost and off boost is considerable in this car, and without a lot of displacement, it does come off boost pretty easily. So I'm going to bring up our second fastest lap here, which was only a couple of hundredths of a second different from our fastest lap, and show you that that most of these laps pretty well sit on top of each other. Kind of makes sense that you have laps almost within a couple hundredths of a second, and their speed traces look almost the same. But there are a couple of different areas here showing that, yeah, this car, although you can really, really attack with it, does take a little bit of a touch, especially with that power delivery, to drive the thing consistently lap after lap. And we can see a couple areas here. This first area right here in a little right-left wiggle where we were able to get on the power more consistently with our slower, what was ultimately our slower lap, and get out of this corner a couple miles an hour faster. Although we got through the corner a little bit faster by entering quickly, did not get the acceleration out of the corner with our fastest lap. So kind of comes down to boost a little bit. If you get into a situation where you maybe overcook a corner that leads to another corner, it might take you a couple of 100 feet to catch back up to the point where you're back on the boost and making all the power that 1.6 liter can possibly make. We also take a look at what VBox thinks our ideal lap is here. We'll actually turn the ideal lap trace on here. VBox thinks we could have been over a half second faster. We were a 1:21.57 second lap for our best lap with the GR Corolla. Now, that puts it squarely in the hunt with all of the performance cars, the performance compact cars on our leaderboard. It's right in there within a tenth of a second or so of the FK8 Civic Type R, right in there with the Veloster N, right in there with the Elantra N. The Golf R is just a tiny bit ahead of it. But the GR Corolla fully in the conversation for all of these performance hatchbacks or performance compact cars out there. And we don't always like to quote ideal laps when it comes to what we can do on the data analysis, because occasionally you'll get an ideal lap that is not really reproducible in the real world. Maybe you sacrificed one corner to make huge gains in another corner that you never could put together the ideal pattern for both of those corners on a single lap. But when we do see pretty big deltas, like over half a second in ideal lap versus actual lap, does kind of tell us that there could be more performance in that car than we might have been getting out of it on this particular day. It sort of comes down to whatever the conditions are in that exact moment, track conditions, temperature conditions. But we do see about another half second on the table here with the Corolla GR. And let's see what VBox thinks we could have been doing. Of course, that little wiggle, that complicated little wiggle here right in the beginning part of the track, a little right-left mid-third gear wiggle, keeping the car on boost there is paramount. So if you come off boost there a little bit, if you're not aggressive enough with the throttle, that's a problem that's going to haunt you for the entire rest of the lap. And that honestly is the major difference I'm seeing on this data chart between the ideal lap and the rest of our lap. So yeah, it does stand to reason that one of the more complex, tighter on-off throttle sections on our particular test track is going to be the key to getting more performance out of this car on a perfect lap. All right, so that's it. The GR Corolla is one of the greatest Toyota Corollas ever to exist on both the Amazing and the Corolla end. It is everything you think it is, and everything you think it is probably fairly impressive. The thing is an absolute hoot to drive. We're going to leave you with a full driver's eye view from behind the wheel of the 2023 GR Corolla at the Florida International Rally and Motorsports Park, and we'll see you next time at the track.
Support brands who support grassroots motorsports. Get your chemical solutions from CRC Industries. To learn more, visit crcindustries.com. Want to see more content like this? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And for more information, visit us online at grassrootsmotorsports.com.